Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started in just another minute or so. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's presentation. My name's Jen Hamft, and I'm part of the State Library of North Carolina's Government and Heritage Library. The State Library is happy to host today's program, which is part 3 of the News You Can Use series, navigating online North Carolina newspaper collections from NewsBank and NewspaperARCHIVE. Please visit the State Library of North Carolina's website to learn more about the Government and Heritage Library's collections and services. You can find that link as well as others we'll talk about throughout the presentation in the chat box. After the presentation, we'll send you a follow-up email with a PDF copy of the session handout from today's program, as well as a link to the presentation recording on the State Library's YouTube channel. Captioning is available for this presentation. To view closed captioning in the Zoom platform, click on the live transcript button on your Zoom control toolbar. You can select either show subtitle for live captions or view full transcript for a full running transcript of the presentation. To make any changes to your captioning settings or to the text size of captions, you can select the subtitle settings option and make changes as you need them. You can also interact with us during the program via chat. Click on the chat button on the Zoom toolbar to bring up the chat box and message us in chat if you need technical help or if you have questions for me about any of the content I cover today. We'll have time to address questions at the end of the session, but feel free to add your questions in chat at any time, and we'll be keeping track of them to answer at the end. You can also unmute to ask questions at the end of the session, but until then, we do ask everyone to please keep their microphones muted. The last bit of housekeeping I'd like to mention is the handout for today's session, which is being posted in chat now as both a Google link and a PDF to download. This handout serves as a takeaway reminder of the search information and tips that I'm going to share with you today about our resources, and should be considered a companion to the handouts of the previous News You Can Use webinars, which contain links and other additional useful resources. If you didn't receive the previous session's handouts when you attended those webinars, we'll send them all to you as PDF attachments, along with the presentation recordings from all 3 News You Can Use webinars after today's session. Now that all the logistics are out of the way, let's get things rolling. I'm really excited to be presenting today's session on online North Carolina newspaper collections. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Jen Hamft, Head of Content and Information Delivery here at the State Library of North Carolina. I oversee the SLNC Government and Heritage Library's public services and digital initiatives, as well as education, outreach, and community engagement. I have a background in academic libraries and information literacy, and I think NewsBank is really my favorite resource that the State Library offers. So I'm thrilled to be able to take you on a deep dive of that resource today, along with some others. First, though, I'll kick things off with an introduction into NewspaperARCHIVE. And before we get into that, I want to tell you how you can access the resources that we're going to be covering today. As with the newspaper collections we talked about in the last News You Can Use webinar, today's resources, NewspaperARCHIVE and NewsBank, can be accessed in some of the same ways. As always, you can access our resources and research tools on site here at the State Library of North Carolina in downtown Raleigh. Our reference staff are extremely helpful and would be happy to assist you with your research if you want to come visit us in person. If you're not able to get to Raleigh, or you just like to do your research from home or from work or at midnight when we're closed, you can also access all of these resources online through the online resources page on the State Library website. You just need your SLNC Government and Heritage Library card. North Carolina residents can apply for their card through the link on screen or in chat. If you're accessing our tools online, you can also get help from us online via our Ask a Librarian chat service, and that link is in chat too. Ask a Librarian is available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and all you need to do is click the link and ask your question. There's no need to download anything or to sign into anything. So getting help with your research from staff at the State Library is so easy, and we really encourage you to reach out to us. Now let's jump into learning about NewspaperARCHIVE. NewspaperARCHIVE is a newspaper database not unlike many of the other newspaper collections that we've talked about in parts 1 and 2 of this News You Can Use series. It includes full text scanned images of newspapers from around North Carolina, around the United States, and many international locations as well. It includes millions of pages of newspaper content dating as far back as 1607 through as recently as this year. In a few minutes, we're going to jump live into the NewspaperARCHIVE site to take a look at the content and take a tour of the resource. But first, let's talk a little bit about searching NewspaperARCHIVE. You're able to search the entire full text of each newspaper within NewspaperARCHIVE, including headlines, article text, photo captions, and advertisements. You can also browse available newspapers by date or location, or by newspaper name, and you can drill down as deep into each as you want. You can search by date from the year, the month, the day. You can drill down through the country, to the state, to the city. And when you find an article that fits your research needs that you'd like to keep, you can then clip or crop the article from the larger newspaper and save it. You can also download it or print that content. And you can also email, embed, or share articles via social media. So let's move over into the NewspaperARCHIVE database so we can see what an actual search looks like and tour the options that we've just talked about. Okay, so I want to note at first that it's really important that you start your NewspaperARCHIVE search through the State Library's access point, which is that slnc.info/OR link that we shared in chat a little while ago. That's a link to our online resources page, which starts out with our newspaper offerings. So if you scroll through that screen, you can find NewspaperARCHIVE, and it's really important to start through that link because NewspaperARCHIVE is a really large database, and there's content that exists in NewspaperARCHIVE that we don't have access to as part of our subscription. And depending on how you access it, the full text content available might be different, or you may not be able to get access to all of our content. So simply going to newspaperarchive.com won't get you access to everything that we provide to you. So we've gone in through that link on the online resources page, and you can see on the NewspaperARCHIve homepage here that we have the option to do a basic search right here in the middle of the screen. And you can search for name, for keyword, or for publication titles. Or you can scroll down the page a little bit and browse by location, by date, or by newspaper name. So let's look at the date option first. we're going to jump in there, and if you scroll a little ways down the screen, you can browse their newspaper archives by century. You can see what they have available from the 1600s, 1700s, and beyond. If we click on the 1700s, for example, then you've got all the years. If we take a look at, say, 1775, it tells us all the newspapers that are available through our subscription that we have in here available to you in the full text from that year, 1775. There's not a whole lot published from the United States. We've got the Annapolis, Maryland Gazette in Maryland, a few from Massachusetts, one from Pennsylvania. I suspect we in the United States were a little bit busy doing other things in 1775. But we do have access to things from Canada, from the United Kingdom, and from various other countries during that year. So if we back right out to the homepage and take a look at the location option, you can also drill down in a similar way under location. If we take a look, say, at Canada, we can see all the provinces in Canada that we have access to newspapers in. We'll try Prince Edward Island. We'll drill down to Charlottetown. These are the newspapers that we have access to in NewspaperARCHIVE that were published in Charlottetown. And then you can either search within the Charlottetown newspapers for a particular name or a particular keyword. You can go to an advanced search, or you can browse the Charlottetown newspapers. So let's take a look now at some of our North Carolina newspapers. We'll scroll down to, oops, the United States is right there at the top. Did not notice that. Okay, now we'll go to North Carolina. We've got all the cities that we have newspapers in NewspaperARCHIVE available for, and this isn't going to be all of the cities in North Carolina, but there are a good number of them. We'll take a look at Burlington, and these are the Burlington newspapers that are available to us, and we can then search within this for a particular topic, or we can go in and browse to see that we have the Daily News from 1923 to 2016, the Daily Times from 23 to 1995, the Daily Times News up to 2007, and so on. So we have a good range, and every city that we have newspaper access to is going to be a little bit different. They're not all going to go up to 2022. They're not all just going to be historical archives. So it may really differ what you're going to be able to find, what date ranges we'll have available, but everything that we have available is in the full text, and you can see a scan of the full newspaper. So if we go back to the main search page, and we'll jump into the advanced search options. So you can see that we have the option to search names. We can search keywords. So you can plug in all the keywords that you're searching for in this all the keywords fields, which essentially links your search terms with and to make sure all of them are coming back to you in the articles that you're searching. You can plug your search terms into the section at least one of these words, which is the equivalent to linking your search terms with or. So it will find at least one of your search terms in the articles that are returned to you. If you plug your search terms into the exact phrase field, it's the equivalent of putting quotation marks around your search terms to keep them together as an exact phrase or as in a first name and last name combination potentially. And if there are words that you want to make sure don't appear in the articles that you're looking for, you can plug those into the without the words sections. I usually recommend using that one sparingly because you don't know where a word might appear in a newspaper, in what context, and it may be unrelated to what you're looking for, but it may be included in some other context, and you don't want to eliminate articles that are really useful to you unnecessarily. So I would watch this without the words field and only use it if it's really necessary. And then once you've got your search terms in, you can narrow by location, and you can then drill down again in the same way as you would with the browse feature, choosing your country, your state, your city, and you can also narrow it down by year or by a range of years. You can say, I want this exact date, or I just want newspapers from this year, or I want newspapers between this time and this time. And you can even say, I'd like to search for this name in 1967 newspapers, but I'll give it a little bit of leeway by 3 years. So 3 years before and 3 years after. And that can really help expand your search to make sure you're not missing out on relevant information. So let's try a search here in Newspaper Archive. Today, we're going to look for articles about a woman who was mentioned during last week's Women's History Month webinar, Sarah Keyes. I'm looking for articles about her case against the Carolina Coach Company, and you can find out more about Sarah Keyes Evans and her case through the links in chat. So we're going to type her name into our search, Sarah Keyes, and we're going to narrow it down to North Carolina as our location. We've already got that. And we also want the exact phrase Carolina Coach, because that helps keep the articles that are returned to us relevant, not just to Sarah Keyes or not just to someone with the name Sarah Keyes, who might not be the person that we're looking for, but articles that reference Carolina Coach to make sure that we're getting the most relevant results that we can. So we'll plug in our search and we get 6 articles mentioning Sarah Keyes and Carolina Coach that were published in North Carolina newspapers. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen, you have the ability to further narrow your results, which may not be that helpful when we only have 6 records returned. But if you get 100, 200 more results to your search, narrowing the results by the options in this right-hand menu could be really helpful to saving you time and making sure that you're looking at the most relevant hits. So we can narrow down even further by city. We can narrow things down by date. We can include just the front page of the articles, because maybe we're trying to find an article that we know was published and it was a front page article. So there are lots of ways that we can narrow things down to help make our searches more efficient. But I think this search got us some pretty good hits. So let's take a look at one of the results. We'll take a look at the Newspaper Archive newspaper viewer so we can see what our options are when we find an article that is what we're looking for. So We'll take a look at this third article down from the Lumberton Robertsonian from November 25th, 1955. That one looks like it could be exactly what we're looking for. And you can see when we get into the article that the search terms are highlighted in the article, which shows us which article to look at. It shows us the context of our search terms within that larger article so that we can better gauge whether this article is what we're looking for right from the get-go. And it also makes it a bit easier for us to find the section that we're looking for in that full page article view. So if we take a look at this red menu bar at the top of our NewspaperARCHIVE newspaper viewer, you can see that there are options available to us within this article. We have the option to zoom in or to zoom out to get a closer look at what we're looking for example, or to get a bigger picture view of the entire newspaper page for a little more context potentially. You can also adjust the brightness and contrast if you need to. I think we all have seen scans of newspaper articles, especially older articles, that are really hard to read. They're either very faded, or they're very dark and sort of shadowy, or it's often helpful if we can manipulate that in some way. And this brightness and contrast adjuster can help you manipulate the page so that you get just the right bit of clarity, or at least more clarity than you might have with the original scan quality. So that can be really helpful. You can also crop or clip your article to cut it out essentially of the larger paper to make it easier to save or print or share. And a lot of people want a copy that doesn't have the yellow highlighting of the phrases that you searched for. You want just a clean copy of the newspaper page or that newspaper article. And the only way that I've found to clear out that highlighting is to click on that crop option and then cancel it. And when you do that, that will clear out the highlighting so that you can then go back and cut it down. So if we then drag our crop tool, we can just click and drag it to resize it to the size that we want for the article that we're trying to copy. Okay, so once we have cropped this article, this blue bar pops up underneath our red toolbar. This is where you can enter lots of information to pair with that article that you've saved so that you have all the information you need. Because if we clip just this article that I have within my bounding box here, that doesn't include the newspaper name that it was published in. It doesn't include the date of the publication. It doesn't include any additional information that might be helpful. So you can add here in the details section, we're going to say this was the Lumberton Robertsonian from November 25th, 1955. And then it asks you to tag the clip. We're just going to tag it as an article, but you can also tag things as birth announcements, obituaries, military notices, things like that. So you have a lot of options to tag your articles, and then you can select a folder to save it in, or you can create a new folder. I'm going to create one called Sarah Keyes Research, and this will save it. You'll notice right here next to log out, it is saying hello to me. So that means that I've created my own free account within NewspaperARCHIVE, and it will allow me to save my research. It will allow me to organize the clippings that I save, to create research folders, to save searches and other things, to favorite pages and things like that. So once I've got all of this information entered, I can then hit clip. And then if I want, I can download it, or I can just close out of that section. But if I go over to my account here in the upper right-hand corner, then I can click on my favorite pages, and right here, it's got that article that I've saved. And if I want to go back, and I could save my search, for example, or I can print this article or this page. I can share it via email, social media. I can embed it into something. I can save it or download it. You just have a lot of great options here in NewspaperARCHIve to organize your research, to save your research, to track what you're looking for. And you also have the ability not just to be searching in North Carolina, as I said, but across the country and across the globe. So NewspaperARCHIve is a really robust and useful tool that's really exciting to use and helpful to keep track of your research. So we're going to go ahead and move on to talk about NewsBank now. And if you have any questions about NewspaperARCHIve, feel free to put them in chat and I'll address them at the end of the presentation. So while a lot of the newspaper collections that we've talked about so far in the News You Can Use series have focused on historical newspaper collections, today we're focusing on collections that include lots of current content. You saw in NewspaperARCHIve that it contains some newspaper issues right up to 2022, and NewsBank really dials that up to 11. This is probably my favorite resource out of everything the State Library offers because it's just so versatile. NewsBank contains lots of current news, but also some historical collections that I think you're going to be really excited about. And it's geared toward all types of researchers, from K-12 or college students to teachers, general researchers, historians, really everyone. Now, our subscription to NewsBank includes several outstanding current and historical collections, including America's News, which is a collection of news sources from all across the United States, and 3 North Carolina-focused collections that I think you'll love. North Carolina Newspapers, which includes current newspapers from across the state from 1985 to the present. The News and Observer Historical Collection, which contains full-text articles of the N&O from 1910 to the present, and the Charlotte Observer Historical Collection, which contains full-text articles from 1886 to the present for the Charlotte Observer. Now, let's look a little bit more closely at each of these individual resources, starting with America's News. This database contains more than 3,600 United States news sources. And by news sources, I mean newspapers, news magazines, news blogs, TV news web articles, college newspapers, and news wires. It has content from the 1980s to the present, and it's a great source for news in a range of areas, from national, regional, and local coverage of domestic and global issues and events, to business, health, politics, education, environment, sports, technology, social issues, and much, much more. America's News also contains some sections which I think are especially helpful for students and teachers, but are also really useful if you just want to keep informed about important issues, like special reports, which focus on current interest topics and provides a global perspective on them, including current and background information from sources around the world, maps, statistics, images, websites, and even suggested search terms to search for more information. There's also Hot Topics, which are current and trending research topics on important and up-to-date global issues, events, and people in business, crime, politics, science, health, sports, the arts, and more. And then there's also daily headlines and lesson plans, which includes top headlines and news stories with reading and grade level indicators and related lesson plans that are aligned to education standards. Now, North Carolina Newspapers is a current news database that includes more than 180 North Carolina news sources from across the state. I think at this point we're at 184 news sources that go as far back as 1985 and as recent as yesterday's issue. It includes local small town and large city newspapers from Murphy to Manio, as they say, college and university newspapers, blogs, web, and video news. You can also elect to receive search updates to get notifications on updates in news coverage on the topics that you're researching. The News and Observer Historical Collection provides the NNO archives from 1910 to the present. From 1910 to 1990, the issues are full-page scanned images, similar to how they appeared in NewspaperARCHIVE that we just looked at. And from 1991 to the present, the content is text only, but still the full text of the articles. The historical collection also includes the NNO blogs and their web edition articles. The Charlotte Observer Historical Collection gives us the Charlotte Observer archives from 1886 to the present. From 1886 to 1984, the issues are again full-page scans, and from 1985 to the present, they're text only, but again, just like with the NNO historical, it's still the full text of the articles. The Charlotte Observer Historical Collection also includes their blogs and web edition articles as well. And before we jump over into the NewsBank databases live, I just want to share a few tips for searching in NewsBank. If you're focused on academic research for K-12 or college level research, a good place to start for ideas is America's News on the suggested topics page. There you can choose from dozens of pre-identified topic options, and each of them leads you to search term ideas to kick off your research. From there, you can then refine your search. You can refine your search results if you want by date, source, or readability level. And you can still narrow or adjust your search terms or your keywords as you need to. And we'll take a look at that in just a minute. If you're doing general research, or if you have a more specific idea of what you're looking for, a better option is to start on the basic search screen, where you can search for a name, a particular event, or a topic or issue of interest. For deeper searches or searches where you need to refine it a little more specifically from the beginning, you can then go straight to the search options or advanced search screens. In an advanced search, you have the ability to search for your keywords or names in different areas of the newspaper, in the headline, the lead paragraph, a photo caption, the body text, and more. You can also do more complex searches by combining multiple search terms with "and" as you need to, and you can narrow your search results by city, by date, by year, by source type, whether it's a college and university newspaper or a blog, by source name, the newspaper name or the resource that you're looking for, and source location, what city in North Carolina or what state across the country, to help you get more relevant article search results. So let's jump out into NewsBank, and we'll do an actual search in the database and take a tour of the resources so that we can see what I'm talking about in action. So we're going to start here on the main welcome screen in NewsBank, which again you get to when you follow that link in that had previously been shared in chat, that slnc.info/OR, and you scroll down the newspaper list to click on one of our NewsBank resources. From here, you can see that you can search America's News, which looks like it includes all of the NewsBank resources that we have access to. Or you can jump into a shortcut for each individual resource, like North Carolina newspapers or the News and Observer directly. But I'll give you an important tip. It looks like this top link for America's News and this bottom link for America's News Historical and Current contain the same things, search the same things, right? But they don't. There is a slight difference between the two that is important for me to make you aware of. America's News, this top link, searches everything from 1985 to the present, while America's News Historical and Current, this bottom link, searches all of that plus those historical collections of the News and Observer and the Charlotte Observer. And then the selected America's historical newspapers right there in the middle searches just that NNO and Charlotte Observer historical collections. So we're going to start in America's News. Now, if you scroll down the page here, you can see we have our basic search box right here at the top. And then we've got those suggested topics that I mentioned a little while ago. And if I click on one, say business and economics, it pops out dozens of subtopic options. So if you click on one of them, we'll try under the agriculture subheading, agribusiness. That will then give us a suggested search that can help us find resources on agribusiness. You can see here that it looks for alternatives. It looks for agribusiness spelled in different ways, one with a hyphen, one without, or phrased in different ways. Instead of agribusiness, maybe the article is talking about agriculture and industry, which is going to be the same thing. So it's giving you those options to suggest successful search terms that can help you get to the information that you need. It's also searching for that in the headline field to make sure the articles that are returned are really relevant. And it's also searching for word counts that are substantial. So you're not getting just, little advertisements or little blurbs or mentions. You're getting more substantial articles. So this is a great resource for students and educators and librarians helping users with their research. You have the option to modify your search. You can add additional search terms as you need to, or you can change things around, however might be helpful. And once you get your search results, you have the option to narrow things down by date, by source type, by year, by particular name of your resource or location. All of the things that we talked about previously, they're right here on this left-hand refine menu. So if we go back to our main screen in NewsBank, you can see where we have access to our special reports, our hot topics, and our daily headlines and lesson plans. If we click on each, I'll show you what we've got here. In special reports, we have really relevant, up to the moment collections of information, current interest topics, global content and resources and information that can help you research important issues. If we go into hot topics, for example, you can choose current events or something a little more focused on issues that might be relevant to your research to get the latest headlines from across the country and the most important news articles that are being published currently. And if we jump into daily headlines and lesson plans, it gives us not only up to the moment articles and where they were published, but it gives us grade levels, Lexile reading levels, and it will link to lesson plans about these particular topics and particular articles that will both outline the educational standards they align with, give questions to consider in class, additional resources, and other options for activities and so on. So if you go back to, let's see, to our America's News search screen, we've got our basic search option here at the top, but if you click on more search options right under your search field, we then can bump into a more comprehensive, complex, advanced search screen, where you can create your own search, or you can select individual resources to search in. We're going to jump into North Carolina newspapers and try some sample searches here. So you can see the range of resources that you can search within in North Carolina newspapers. Everything from Charlotte's local ABC station, their web news, to the Apex Herald and the Bennett College newspaper, to the Blowing Rocket from Blowing Rock, which gets my newspaper name of the day award. And we also know that newspapers like the News and Observer, the Charlotte Observer, the Fayetteville Observer, large papers like those are also included in the 184 different newspapers in North Carolina newspapers. So if we go to, we've got our advanced search screen right up here at the top. You can see your options for searching for your keywords or your name or your topic. You can look in the lead paragraph, the headline, the caption. You can search by word count or date or so on. So we're going to run a quick search for Sarah Keys again. We're going to put her name in quotation marks to keep it together as one name and not search for, say, Sarah here and Keys there, which may or may not give us relevant options. And we'll also search for that. We'll search for her name in the first paragraph of all the articles. And let's run our search and look at the options for refining it. So we get 8 articles from this search. We've got articles about the historical marker, about her 92nd birthday celebration, and a number of others. You get a bit of a preview here to the right of the article title, which can help you see the context of your search terms in the article to help you get a bit of a better idea whether it's relevant for your research, whether you want to click on it, essentially. And you can refine your search again here to the left, just like when we searched before in America's News. And if you select an article, we'll choose this very first one, for example, you have a lot of options here in this row of icons at the top of the screen. You have the ability to cite your article for students, for librarians, for educators who know how important those citations and bibliographies are. You can choose what kind of citation you want, whether it's MLA, APA, Turabian, or something else, or if you want to export your citations to another resource like EndNote. You also have the ability to email your article, to print or download it. You can create a link, or you can save it to your folder. Again, just like with NewspaperARCHIVE, you can create a free account within NewsBank to save your articles, to organize your research, and to keep better track of the searches that you're doing. So this gives you the option to save this article to that folder. You can also save your entire search if you want to make sure that you can come back to your search results later, or remember what search terms you used to get those results, or which search terms you've tried already if you're doing a longer term research project. You can also create a search alert on a particular topic of interest that's developing, or that you want to see what's in the news about it. For example, if you wanted to run a search about Ukraine and refugees, for example, or about COVID and variants, you could run those searches in America's News or in North Carolina newspapers and get updates about the coverage as it's developing in the news. Or, for example, if you want to monitor news coverage about your workplace, or about something to do with your job. For example, if the state library's communications staff wanted to know what news is being published about the state library in North Carolina news outlets, we could create a search alert on that. So let's go back to our search screen. We'll do a new search for the State Library of North Carolina. I'm going to search for it in the headline, and we'll see what we get. We get several articles, really good stuff on our broadband partners, our genealogy research projects. Right here above my search results, there's a link to create an alert. So I want to create an alert. I want it to send those results to me, and I want to do it, we'll say, once a week, and send them to me on Fridays so that I can see what articles were published in North Carolina news outlets about the State Library of North Carolina. And then I click Create Alert, and it will go ahead and create that, if I go into my folder, it will save my search. You can also see any saved articles that you saved or any saved searches. So there's a lot that you can do with NewsBank and the great research options that we have in NewsBank, from America's News, giving you that national coverage, to North Carolina newspapers, to those News and Observer and Charlotte Observer historical archives. That's really why I think that NewsBank is such a terrific resource. It's really got something for everyone, and it's incredibly robust for contemporary and historical news research. So that's about all the time that we have for the deep dive into NewspaperARCHIVE and our NewsBank resources. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have at this point, and I encourage you to post your questions in the chat box. So let's take a look now and see what questions have come through chat already. Let's see. We've got a question. How much does NewspaperARCHIVE overlap with the newspapers.com collection of North Carolina newspapers? And NewspaperARCHIVE is not available via NC Live, correct? So there is some overlap. As with many, many research databases, there is going to be some overlap, but there is also significant differences in the collections. For example, newspapers.com is very heavily focused on pre-1925 news articles, things that are out of copyright, whereas NewspaperARCHIVE, as we've seen today, has articles right up until 2022. So you're going to get some more recent coverage in NewspaperARCHIVE that you wouldn't in newspapers.com. And no, I believe NewspaperARCHIVE is not available through NC Live. It's just available through the State Library of North Carolina's collections. So another question that we've gotten is, does getting into NewsBank require a password or just the SLNC library card number? I believe it only requires your state library card number. If any of our resources require a password, it would be that PIN number that you set up when you got your library card. And you can just call our reference desk here at the State Library, and they can help you either reset your PIN number or let you know what it is. But usually our online resources only require your state library card number. Another question that we've gotten is, my son's a middle school student here in North Carolina. Can he get a library card to use these online resources? That answer is yes, absolutely. 16 years and older, they can get their own library card. Under 16, you need to have a parent or guardian sign, but you can still get a state library card, and that would be great to use for NewsBank research, NewspaperARCHIVE, any of our other newspaper collections, any of our other databases. We have lots of online resources. You can also come into the library and check out books as you need them. So let's see if we have any additional questions. Okay, can you find obituaries in these databases? The answer to that is both yes and sometimes. With NewspaperARCHIVE articles, because they are full text scans of the entire paper, death notices and obituaries are included in that full text. So you can search for a name, for example, and obituary or death notice, and that's a good way to search in Newspaper Archive. The same with News and Observer and Charlotte Observer Historical, because they're full text scans, you can search in the same way. For the more contemporary NewsBank articles, it really depends on the newspaper. Some of them do not submit their obituaries or death notices to NewsBank, and some of them do. So I suggest you try, and if you're not finding what you think should be available, you can just reach out to us at the State Library and we'll be happy to help you find what you're looking for. I'm really excited that folks seem to have learned a lot during this session. Like I said, these are my favorite resources that we offer, and I think people aren't often aware of all the exciting things that you can do and find within these sources, everything that's available to them for free with your state library card. So it's really exciting to be able to share that information with all of you guys. And I'm very happy that you found this informative and helpful. So thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. If anyone has questions that we didn't get to or that you didn't feel comfortable submitting in chat, I encourage you to reach out to me through the contact information that was provided earlier, and I'll be happy to help. I do have a couple of additional announcements before we wrap up today's webinar. First, we really hope that you enjoyed today's program and found the information and tools that we talked about to be valuable. And we'd appreciate it if you would take a moment to complete a short survey to tell us how we did, how we can improve, and what future programs you'd like to see from us. We also want you to save the date on April 7th at 11 a.m. for our next GHL event, Once a Decade, exploring the 1950s census release with Kelly Karras of the U.S. Census Bureau. Kelly will be talking to us about the historic release of the 1950 U.S. Census, which will occur on April 1st. We're going to hear about how the census was conducted in 1950, as well as information about the content of the questionnaire and population statistics from that era. This webinar is going to be great for data users, genealogical researchers, and anyone interested in U.S. history. We really hope that you'll be able to join us. And finally, I'd like to extend thanks to Jennifer Davison from the State Library for chat support, and thanks to all of you for joining us for today's webinar. We look forward to seeing you at future GHL events, and we hope you have a great day. Thanks a lot.